welcome to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast with Ross Miller and Tom Collins, and a moment's silence now for the end of the jump season. Ross, we are with you in these tricky times as we come to the close of another whirlwind rollercoaster of a season I think will be remembered for topsy-turvy weather, a season where we had to bring in a few all-weather specials to fill in for abandoned racing due to the frost, etc. But obviously, the likes of Constitution Hill, Corrick Rambler and that epic Gold Cup did really serve up the best of the jumps, but it does all have to come to an end like all good things. And Ross, as the season comes to close, I'm sure you have your own standout moments. That 170 to 1 tip on Premier Magic must be up there. What will your reflections be of this season?
I've just really enjoyed it, Jess. I mean, the more you delve into the racing, the more you find the stories, the more you get attached to jockeys, trainers, owners, horses, pedigrees. I just get immersed in it, much to Mrs. Miller's absolute frustration. She might get a little bit more of me now through the summer because I don't chuck myself into the flat quite as much, although you two are already drawing me in a bit more in previous years than I have previously. I just think it's been a really good season. I think there's lots of positive stories, and I think even in retrospect, looking back at the negative story around Aintree, I think going forward that's going to be a real positive, because I think it's kicked everyone up the backside and said we have got to do better, we've got to be cohesive, and I think the sport for too long has not been cohesive. I think we'll probably talk about that in a minute, and I think going forward it could be a real shot in the arm for us.
Yeah, certainly. And look, you touched on it, and we've already heard about changes that's going to come for next season. The BHA has come from a lot of rap for not doing enough to try and look at ways to protect the sport and enhance the best of the sport, but also look about ways of changing it for the best. And I think the one thing that I'll take away, I don't think it's always on the jumps, but it can be on the flat, is field sizes, the lack of competition, too much racing, prize money. We could go on for days, but there has been a change, and we'll look ahead to next season, and there will be amendments to the jump schedule. There's a lot to take from the statement that you can find on the BHA website. And I suppose when we want more competition, healthy field sizes, but then on the flip side, you do have the likes of Nicky Henderson saying that there's the lack of options for 2-milers. Seeing races like the Grade 1 Tolworth Hurdle move to Aintree's new Boxing Day fixture. We're also seeing a couple of notable races being lost, the likes of the Many Clouds at Aintree, the Grade 2, won by Noble Yates and Protectorat, the Future Stars listed race. There's a lot of changes coming next season. What do you make of that?
I think it's brilliant. I'm sure it'll be a bit painful for some of us. We all have our favourite races. I'm a real fan of the Dipper Novice Chase at Cheltenham. I was normally there. I had a good record in it. I've seen some nice horses win it, but in later years, it's not been a great race. And I think no one could argue that, the Many Clouds, I hope he gets another race named after him. But the race last year was a bit of a non-event. It's not throwing up the sort of horses, and I think we can't have our cake and eat it. I had to laugh at my Twitter feed yesterday. All winter it's been, this is dross. There's 3 runner fields. There's 4 runner fields. It's not competitive. They do something about it that is going to make it more competitive. And then my Twitter feed yesterday was, but I love the Leamington Hurdle at Warwick, I think we've got to get realistic. We can't have everything. I think it will undoubtedly make racing more competitive. And the only issue I had with it really was I'm not sure we need a 2-mile hurdle at Sandown at the end of the season. I just thought that possibly would detract from horses trying to do the Cheltenham Aintree double, as Constitution Hill showed so effortlessly that he was able to do this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought there were some interesting changes. I liked the amendment from the Desert Orchid to becoming a Grade 2 limited handicap. More handicaps the better, and also encourage these Grade 2 horses to run in handicaps with big weights. We're going to see it this weekend as well. You've got a lot of French horses, but I think you get the best out of horses. You get wonderful stories, and didn't we see it in the Sandown Gold Cup just yesterday? Horses that have applied their trades and handicaps, then moving out into bigger and better things. And I just think it hopefully it might take a couple of seasons to sort of get used to, but it will be for the best, and that's what we want for our sport. Thanks, Ross, for your thoughts on that, and also well done last week. Your next best selection, Rubo, was a winner, as well as Kitty's Light, who won the Scottish National at an SP of 4-1. So that gave you a 21.5-1 double. And it leads us quite seamlessly into this weekend's big preview, and we're going to focus on what we love to call the Whitbread Gold Cup at Sandown, as it was formerly known. And Kitty's Light is back again 7 days after those heroics up in Scotland. He is looking to do this brilliant double and make it a third straight success in a row. He's got his lovely racing weight of 10 stone. The mark of 140 is due to go up. I think it's £6. And I suppose, Ross, we'll go back to you again. Did he look like a horse with full of running that can come back a week later? Because I think it's going to be some training performance if you can do this double.
Well, no, he didn't. But then you'd probably argue through most of his career, he's looked like a horse that's virtually had enough after a mile in most of his races. So I think you can't you can't take him literally. He is a remarkable horse, trained by a remarkable trainer who does things differently. I think he's going to be suited by this new calendar going forwards. It's if you're going to back him or tip him, which I am, you're taking a risk on a 7-day turnaround. They tried it with Captain Orden, that didn't work, but no two horses are the same. He's well in at the weights. He's got a lovely racing weight. He's going to love this ground. We know that for certain. And then the jumping test is just a bit of a question, but he handled it quite well last time around Sandown. Going down the back those railway fences, if he gets out of rhythm there, which he can do, that's going to be a problem. But conversely, the long run between 2 out to the last is really going to suit him, because the fences can get a bit in his way. When he's in full gear. He was pretty lucky at the last. Like, I think if that was on a different course, he might not have got away with that. But I also think if it was on a different course, he probably wouldn't have tried it. I think he's a very intelligent sort of horse. He knows his limitations. He knows what he can and can't get away with. In terms of whether he can back it up, go back to July 2020. He ran 3 times in novice hurdles between the 1st July and the 19th of July. And then had a 3-week break incidentally, and won his opening handicap chase off a mark of 109. How well in was he that day? So it shows that even as a young horse then, he had a fair constitution, because actually each of those 3 runs, although he wasn't troubling the judge, he stepped forward on each of them. I think he's just a real tough, hard little horse. I give him every chance. The questions are obvious, but I think well in at the weights on this ground, I give him a chance. And then one more that I do like is Broken Halo for Paul Nicholls. He's got good course form the last twice in the Grand Military Gold Cup and the Royal Artillery Gold Cup when amateur ridden. In these amateur military races, they tend to go quite hard, as they do in amateur race. They tend to get racing a little bit early. He did have the best jockey on in Jody Soul each time. But he got racing early. He stayed really well the last time, just under hands and heels riding. Joe Soul knows his limitations, didn't pick his stick up, and he just galloped right the way through the line. I think he's a horse that will steer this trip out very well. He's up to 135, but Tom Buckley takes 3 off. And he's still below his highest winning mark of 137 when winning at Fontwell by 17 lengths from Black Jerry, who's now rated 142. So I think this horse has got huge upsides. If the ground is properly quick on the good side, that's a question mark, but he's handled good to soft really well. Paul Nicholls has kept his horse in remarkable form all season through, and I think around about 20-1, he's massively overpriced.
Yeah, Tom Buckley takes 3 off as well. What do you make of that? I thought that was quite interesting booking there.
Yeah, I think Tom Buckley's gone a bit under the radar. I mean, he's moved from Nigel Hawke to Paul Nicholls. He's had to take his time. Paul Nicholls got plenty of jockeys in there, but every time I've seen him be given a chance, he's taken it. I think along with his brother Kieran, who's now out in Ireland with Gavin Cromwell, they're a really good pair. They use their brain. They seem pretty composed, ride with a good length of leg. I have absolutely no issue with him whatsoever. And any weight off a horse's back in these day and handicap chases is ideal for me.
Yeah, it gives him a lovely racing weight of 10 stone. Just noting there that he actually did win on the horse back in March of 2022 in a novice chase. So obviously is going back on that winning partnership. So interesting. Broken Halo, obviously. Kitty's Light, you'd be a fool not to have him as a savior. You don't want him to get too short for a race like this, but I think if you can get 5-1 in a roundabout, which you've got now, which hopefully SBK can give us, considering he looks like a horse that just thrives at this time of year. He's ran in this race twice before, hasn't he? And run with enormous credit. So he's got a wonderful partner in Jack Tudor who gets the best out of him. I thought he just gave him such a cool ride last time and the time before in the Ida. So you've got to love Kitty's Light. Tom, I'll bring you in as well. There's so much to take away to pick out of this race. So I thought, you've got that Ultima form that would possibly is definitely worth noting. I wanted to use that as an angle, especially seeing Fast or Slow winning the Sandown Gold Cup yesterday, and obviously Corrick Rambler backing that form up. And there's a couple of horses, the Goffer, T Clipper being two of them in there. Do they give you warrant any respect for you, or have you gone elsewhere?
Yeah, they were both on my shortlist, I have to say. I do prefer the Goffer out of the two, just because I think he's the strongest stayer, and they're likely to go fast pace in here with the likes of Ansam, Frodon, Anu and Victus all in the field. I also think the ground will be good to soft. It's currently listed as good, which is remarkable given the flat track is listed as heavy for Friday's fixture. But there is 5 millimetres of rain scheduled for Thursday afternoon. It's currently Thursday morning that we're filming this. So I think it will go on the soft side of good. And it will become a real stamina test. So out of the two in the Ultima, I prefer the Goffer, though it is worth noting that Gordon Elliott has a pretty bleak strike rate with runners in the UK outside of Cheltenham, Perth and Ayr. He doesn't have a very good strike rate at the likes of Sandown, Ascot, etc. So you have to factor that in, and that was just enough to put me off the Goffer, I have to say. Kitty's Light, I fully respect him, but I feel like it's very much the case that we made earlier in the season for Captain Nord when he won the Swindie Chase, and he was coming back 7 days later to run at Kempton in the Coral Trophy, and he got stuffed that day. And everyone made a case that Captain Nord's well handicapped, he's in form. Now, Kitty's Light is slightly different. He's very game as they come. And whenever he races, he tends to save some. That's why he's always so strong at the finish. Maybe he could win again. I don't know. I think he's short enough in the market. And I was also going to touch on those 3 races early in his career when he was a novice hurdler, 3 runs in 18 days. But I mean, it's really hard to put any weight in those efforts, I think, because he just wasn't trained to win those races. He was popping around the back to get a handicap mark. We can say it because he won next time up off a very light, lenient mark. Like, that was the whole aim. So I think the fact that he ran 3 times in a short period of time there cannot be used as evidence that he's going to handle a quick turnaround. Maybe he will. There's no evidence that he can't, but I don't think you can use it as a pro for him. So I just looked for one at a big price. Certainly Red was the horse that stood out to me. Now, he's going to be overlooked in the market because of his connections, but the booking of Crack Conditional, Caelan Quinn, I think is a huge positive and gives me a lot of confidence in that regard. This horse was in fantastic form earlier in the season. He racked up 2 wins at Wincanton and a victory at Sandown, albeit over a much shorter trip. Then he had a break at the start of the spring, which was clearly used to freshen him up for events like this. He's come back with an effort over hurdles, which you can't take literally because that was just to shake off the rust. And I think he's handicapped. He's gone up the weights. Look, we can't overlook that, but I think he's still handicapped to win. And with this good conditional rider on board and the fact he loves a real stamina test at Sandown on deep ground, he can't be overlooked for an each way or place play at double figure odds.
Okay, so would you be hopeful that there's probably a bit more rain around for him if it's especially as you say, the going description is slightly perplexing with the flat course and the jumps course being two different descriptions.
Yeah, it is a bit odd, the contrasting ground conditions, but hopefully there is a little bit more rain for him. It's going to be a stamina test no matter what, I think, no matter if it's good to soft ground, good ground, because they're going to go reasonable gallop. It's over 3 miles, 4.5 furlongs. Like, you're going to need an abundance of stamina to get home, and he definitely has that.
Okay, fine. So certainly Red, who's around 16-1 for Lydia Richards, Caelan Quinn, the 9-year-old, who's definitely, as you say, don't worry about that last run. That was definitely a good prep in for this. And you have to think a lot of horses have been sort of set up for this race. They've been waiting for this. And my two are two that have have got different profiles, and Sam being the first of them. I was in the studio when I watched him win the Boyne Cup at Ludlow last time out, beating the Wolf. I thought it was a really interesting race to watch from and Sam supporters, because they changed up tactics. He's normally a horse that goes out and gets given a positive ride by Adam Wedge, but they just sort of decided just to let him sort of hunt into the pack a little bit, and actually brought out another side to Ansam. Showed he's fairly versatile, and I like the confidence Evan Williams had from him when he came out afterwards and said, look, got his confidence back. We want to keep going, keep rolling. This is a horse that has patchy enough form throughout the course of the season, but he has showed himself to be a proper jumper, and I think he can stay well. Like, this will be a first test at a trip further than 3 miles for him, but he didn't show like he was stopping at the line last time out, and I think that Evan Williams, who probably by his standards has had a quiet enough season, he's had a nice few winners lately, and hopefully they're just sort of in a better vein of form. So I do like Ansam at around 11-1. The other horse I'm going to put up is got a better racing weight, and that's Kurvala for Chris Gordon and Rex Dingle's on board. This horse could not live with the quality, I'd imagine, in the National Hunt Chase, but a race that's worked out very well. We saw how well guided Manil ran in the Grand National, and Mr. Coffey did as well. And yes, he did pull up. Probably wasn't massively suited by very soft going conditions, and just couldn't really live with them either, but then proved himself again back at Exeter last time, where he was held up and stayed on really strongly. He's only up £5. Yes, that this is a completely different test again, but I think that he'll benefit from a big hustle and bustle of this kind of race. And again, as I said, he's got a nice racing weight for this, for the team, Chris Gordon team, who I just really, really rate massively. So I hope to see him do well here. Kurvala, who'll be a big price, double figure price, I would like for him. And so that's the Sandown Gold Cup. And on finals day, it's going to be a day for plenty of angles. We've got the last day of the Punchestown Festival. We've got very informative racing at Leicester on the flat, where I'll be. So I'm really looking forward to going up there for the day. We've got Hewick, who's got Rachel Blackmore on board, the horse that ran a blinder in the Gold Cup before falling. Rachel Blackmore's booked up at Sandown. Was also racing at Haydock as well. Ross, I'll come to you first. So much to pick from. I'm sure you're going to make the most of the jump action in this official final day, although we do have jump racing beginning pretty quickly afterwards. I'm at Warwick on Monday. I don't know where the break, I assumed that there was going to be a break, but we're jumping pretty quickly. So you've got your racing where you want it very soon after Saturday.
Yeah, the BHA will be dealing with that next year, let's hope, given the flat chance to sort of come to the front and leave the jumps alone for a bit. But yeah, I am sticking with Sandown for one last hit of jump racing. The nap is in the 140, Paul Nicholls Grenadine. I've already said that Paul Nicholls has kept his horse in great form. Grenadine's won this last 2 years. I think he'll win it a third time. At the time recording, John Bon is favourite, and that absolutely staggers me. He's the 4th highest rated in the field. He's racing off level weights. He's got £9 to find with Grenadine. Aidan Coleman was this week saying that he wouldn't mind having another crack at his Conqueror at the Cheltenham Festival with a more positive ride on better ground. Well, I was at Aintree, and I don't think it was a great ride on John Bon to win last time. I thought it was negative in the main part. I thought he was positive in a few places. I wasn't all that impressed. Aidan Coleman is a really nice guy from what I've seen, a very intelligent speaker, but I think he's undoubtedly on the back 9 of his career, and I'm just not sure he's the jockey he was. I think he's riding with nerve or nerves and a bit of a lack of confidence, and I just don't see that he's going to be positive enough on John Bon in open grade around Sandown to get that job done. I think Grenadine is very uncomplicated. Harry Cobden's riding on a crest of a wave at the moment. He was brilliant at Punchestown this week. And I just think the market's got it all wrong. Grenadine should comfortably account for John Bon and the rest. And then in the 250, Hewick mentioned with Rachel Blackmore, he's a short enough price, but I think there's very little to throw against him, other than the fact he fell last time. And I know some very esteemed tipsters that wouldn't go near a horse that had fallen last time. I can forgive it because he's clearly a tough horse. They were prepared to go to Punchestown this week. They swerved that on account of the slightly softer ground. I think this looks a sort of much easier contest. He's got bags of speed. You want a Galway plate off 155. He's already proven he likes this course by winning this race last year off a mark of 149. I think he's got plenty of speed. He'll love the good ground. And I think Rachel Blackmore is a really solid booking.
Yeah, look, she's obviously over to ride Captain Guinness as well for Henry de Bromhead, and there's the last day of the Punchestown Festival. So it's there's so much going on in Ireland. So yeah, great to have Hewick in this competition because he was meant to be running in the Punchestown Gold Cup, you say, and a fabulous horse. Let's hope that fall. Let's hope the race hasn't taken too much out of them. We saw the Punchestown Gold Cup yesterday. Briefly, love to get your thoughts on that. Do you think it was a case of they kind of underestimated Fast or Slow in behind, or do you think someone might have got it? I mean, Harry Cobden was very self-deprecating afterwards, saying that he just missed that final fence. And then I thought Paul Townend might have just judged it just a shade or so late on Gallopin des Champs, and where you could get away with that Punchestown, but you could have done at Cheltenham.
I just thought Gallopin des Champs looked a little bit flat, and I thought it was only his guts and class that got him as close as he was at the end. Personally, I'm not certain that even if Harry Cobden had jumped the last, he'd have beaten Fast or Slow. It's very painful to talk about, Jess. I'm sure it is for you, because I know you were a fan of Fast or Slow in the Ultima. So quite how he got beaten in that and then goes and wins this is painful to talk about. I thought it was a really good race. I think it shows, as did Farinelli actually, which we ought to mention, that these horses can be campaigned with sort of ambition if it suits the horse. You can't just say that Farinelli winning a bumper in December and then winning at the Punchestown Festival over Fences in April can be done with every horse, because like people, they're all different. But I think you have to applaud Emmett Mullins. I think you have to applaud Martin Brazil and Fast or Slow. He's a clearly upwardly mobile horse. But no, I just Punchestown, I just draw a line through the form. You know, Album Photo was beaten there after winning a Gold Cup. I just think perhaps, you know, whether they went a bit easy on Gallopin des Champs after the Gold Cup win, I don't know. But I wouldn't particularly hold it against Paul Townend. I actually think he's riding particularly well in the last couple of months.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've sometimes you have to put a line through the form, but then you do see things like Gaelic Warrior, and you think, oh, that's interesting for next season, what he does over 3 miles, and A Dream to Share. I mean, they were going over on Racing TV how there hasn't been a horse, I don't think, that has existed to win 5 bumpers, and you've got to be some sort of freak to do that. And turn up at all these different festivals. Whether he converts it over hurdles, we'll see. But it was, where we thought it would be a William Mullins domination, we're only halfway through it. There's been some really nice stories for some other trainers and some other really good campaigning by other trainers. So, yeah, always good to see and good for the health of Irish national hunt racing. Tom, I'm imagining you're going out elsewhere outside of Sandown because there's some really, really good flat cards on Saturday.
Yeah, firstly, there is a horse that's won 5 bumpers, and I pointed this out to Mr. Fran Berry, I did say on Twitter. Turbo Lynn back in 2006, 2007 for Alan Swinbank. But we'll get back to the Napa next best. The Nap is at Leicester. Well, Alan Swinbank, super fan back in the day. The Nap is in the 305 at Leicester, and I know you fancy one in here as well, but it's not the same horse. My big fancy is Al Mubir. Now, I strongly fancied him for the Lincoln. He went off a short price favourite. I thought he was well treated off a mark of 97 that day, and he ran respectably to finish 5th of 22. He never really looked like he was going to win at any point, but he was there or thereabouts at the finish line. The handicap has not punished him for that effort, and he's a big, strong horse who's likely to come on for the run. So as much as William Haggas thought he was 100%, he probably wasn't. I think he'll shake off that tiny bit of rust from Doncaster, still off the same mark, and he's facing much weaker opposition at Leicester. William Haggas has a 29% strike rate at this track in the last 5 years. William Buick, who takes the ride, 27% strike rate at this track in the last 5 years. Considerably easier than his last effort. And I think Al Mubir will win the 305 at Leicester. And my next best, look, this weekend I thought was really difficult from a punting perspective. It's not one that I'm going to get too involved in. So my next best is virtually a stat attack, which is just kind of masquerading as an
It's
next best.
back. The stat attack
Yeah,
comes back from the dead.
It's back in nature rather than name. And that is that Ian Jardine has only ever had 2 runners at Leicester in his training career. He's going to make that 3 on Saturday as he sends just 1 horse down from his Carruthers-town base. It's a 450-mile journey, a 9-hour round trip. And that horse is Hour by Hour, who runs in the 4:15 at Leicester. Now, this 3-year-old's already shown a love for soft ground, and I think that's kind of why he's sending him down to Leicester. If you saw the first meeting at this track early in the season, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, they were finishing wide apart. It was like the boat race. It was unbelievable. There was about 60, 70 lengths between first and last in every race. There was a 3-runner novice event where the winner beat the second by 50 lengths, and there was 40 lengths back to the third. It was ludicrous. So the ground is in quite a state already at Leicester, and I think this is why Ian Jardine is sending Hour by Hour down to the track. He won on soft ground at Hamilton earlier in his career, his only victory, and he came back off a layoff to finish second on soft ground at Pontefract last time. I think he's well handicapped, and just this entry, miles away from the the stable is very interesting. So Hour by Hour in the 4:15 at Leicester is the next best /stat attack.
Brilliant. Yeah, Leicester they not have to have flag starts throughout the course of yeah, exactly. I mean, Matt, let's hope it's a little bit more straightforward for Leicester, but we've got some really interesting horses running there as well, including none of them Baid's half brother, who runs it has his first race, Nakib, in the 10 furlong novice. Baid began his life at Leicester. Nakib's by Nathaniel's got a Derby entry. He's trying to work out if there are any horses that have gone to the Derby after one run. If he was to win this, he might have time for another run in between. But let's see. I'll be really interested. I've seen some pictures on social media, on Twitter, and he looks like a lovely looking animal. And so looking forward to seeing him in the flesh at Leicester on Saturday. Right, from me, I was looking at declarations early this morning and was waiting to see how this would unveil. And Bo Pedro, who's my nap in the 305 at Leicester, did have Ryan Moore on board, but he's now switched over to Arian Power for Sir Michael Stout, which is unsurprising really because of his connections to Sir Michael. But David Probert's gain, and he teams up with David O'Meara. I think, Ross, we were chatting about Bo Pedro a while ago in one of these pods, talking about that he had a big handicap in him at some point. Now, I hope he hasn't blown his handicap mark after winning at Newmarket last time. He won at a lovely price of 11-1, and he just showed all the attributes that we discussed. I think, this is a horse that David O'Meara is just finding right. I think the ground is a big key for him. I think been given a nice patient ride as well. Now, Danny Tartope has got the best out of him. I assume he must be at the likes of Haydock or Doncaster on Saturday. But if he gets given a nice ride, and if the pace holds up out in front as well, he should like that too. He does need to defy a 6-pound rise in the weights, which is considerable, but there's not a huge amount separating any of these horses really. It's quite a compressed race, and I do like Bo Pedro. I still think there's more in there, and he obviously arrives here in good form, so I'm taking on TC for this race. My next best, I go over to Haydock for the 420. A horse that I was impressed by at Kempton, who he won last time, is Deceiver for the Kublers. Has been given quite, I think, a lenient enough opening mark of 79. The form is working out all right. Like, he has to step up his game a little bit in a competitive handicap, but I think he's got a nice racing weight of 8-9, and he again should be a horse that should be suited by a strong pace and a good field. It'll be interesting to see how he goes now back on the turf. But he's a horse that on his first start was third to Arrest, who heads to the Classic Trial on Friday. So Deceiver off a mark of 79 could be quite well handicapped. And finally, a quick word for With Respect, who runs in the 205 at Haydock over 6 furlongs. This race has been a bit of a plan since he won at Southall back in February. We've given him a nice break, which he's really enjoyed. He's in very good spirits at home, and we were hoping that it would be slightly softer than this. He really is ideal on softer than good ground. But he's got his winning partner, Richard Kingscott, who was on board him when he won first time out as a 2-year-old. And I don't think this is the most competitive of races. And although his winning form from Southwell hasn't turned out brilliantly, I think that he's just showed himself to be the class horse that he is, and he definitely should still be off a mark of 70. He's just obviously had a long time off with a tendon injury, so that took him 2 seasons out, so he's just sort of getting there now, and the tongue tie definitely helped him last time. So fingers crossed he runs well. That's in the 205 at Haydock on Saturday. That's it from us. We'll be back next week. We hope that Ross enjoys his final day of the jump season proper. But as we know, there's plenty more where that comes from over the course of the summer. Controversially, it might be, but there is always summer jump racing, and we can get some of his insights throughout the course of the season. But we also hope that he can give us some of his flat tips, because they aren't half bad, and he loves his juveniles as well. But a reminder that new SBK customers can get £20 in free bets by betting £10. T's and C's always apply. Remember to subscribe to whatever podcast channel you listen to. We're also on YouTube, so you can see us. And there's also plenty of other content, as well as SBK ambassador content, including George Bowie's stable tour, so not to be missed. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.